So let's talk about cultural sustainability for a second as well. You recently announced that you will be departing the organization after 31 years. How do you go about trying to instill the management practices that have proven successful over time, the approach and the respect to the mission that you have? How do you ensure that that is retained within the institution as you change leadership?
I'm tempted to say with an iron will, but actually it's my style of leadership is kind of, I think, would be classified as servant leadership, where I would not ask anybody to do something that I wouldn't do. Now, there's some things I can't do as well as others. In fact, I pride myself in having people that are far more capable than I in areas of responsibility, because they can make me look really good and help me stay in a job this long. Yeah. But to let people do what they want to do. For example, the gentleman who runs our library was the one who said we need to have a website, and that's how we became one of the very first adapters of websites, and why we're digitizing it. In the grants area, my grants person helps us understand that there are different ways to go about grant making that could be more helpful. We started making grants not just to individual sports, but for example, that SMAF grant was to an organization, and its work will help a lot of sports programs, a lot of the football leagues over time. So I listen to the staff to figure out how best to do it. What I'm most proud of, and we just had a study done, which I'll be presenting to the board at our board meeting tomorrow, over the 30 years of grant making, which talks about the fact that even when we said no, and we say no 2 out of 3 times, unfortunately, people feel that they got something, and they felt even good about having been told no, not this time, that there's something else we can do. For example, we tell them that we'll help them with a coaching program, or we'll give them some advice on how to make the program better and make them acceptable for grant making next time. And so giving respect to people is what's very important to me, and I think that that's very much instilled in the organization.
How do you choose your successor?
Well, the best thing to do on succession is let somebody else choose. And the board will do that. I will help them know what the things, what I think would be important in someone coming into that. But I've done my work, so it's up to the board. There'll be a search committee, which I hope will be formed at the meeting tomorrow, and they'll get their work done. I'll be there to advise. But it's important. Fortunately, I'm old enough, I'm sure you don't. Can't imagine how old I really am, but you could have added it up by now anyway. It's on the Google and all those places. Okay, anyway. But I've had the opportunity to move away from other things, and I find it's important to just say, okay, it's your turn, and hope that the things that you think are important will be continued, and if not, tough luck for them.
So for others who may be going through leadership transitions within their organization, do you think that philanthropic success is largely related to individual leadership, or more so versus institutional culture?
Oh boy, that's tempting for me to answer that one way, or to be more thoughtful. Certainly it has to do with so many things, and I cannot claim the success of the foundation was exclusively my success. We were a team, and I'm proud to say that the 2 key vice presidents I hired the year that I became president, and they've been with me, and they will be there after I'm gone, which I think is an important testimony that they enjoyed what they were doing and felt it was important enough to stay there and do that. It's been interesting because we're not a normal or a typical, I'll say typical, private foundation. I talked a little bit about the research. We also did things on ACLs for when there was this epidemic of ACL injuries for women. So why is this happening? We undertook some research and found out, this is going to shock you all, well, the warm-up and the exercises were designed for men, and their body shapes are slightly different, so all of the warm-ups were for a body that went like this, and so to go this way, which is a women's, from the hips down, different muscles need to be engaged. So they developed, and we promoted it, a different warm-up for sports where soccer, basketball, tennis, sports where you have to go stops and all those things. And nobody had bothered to do that before. And it was a 90 to 95% 6% decrease in injuries when you do those things. So please look on our website if you have a program with girls and engage in those warm-ups. It's very simple. It doesn't take any more time than you would normally, but it makes a huge difference in their health and the strength of the knees. So stuff like that we get to do.
So I'm going to ask one more question and then allow others to also ask questions. And I think you've touched upon this a little bit with the research that you've done as an organization, the training that you've done of coaches who then in turn can pass on that knowledge and that expertise to those who they coach. What would you like the long-term legacy for LA 84 to be? You've been such an integral part of the organization for so many years. I assume that you see the organization continuing for many more.
Oh, yeah.
You know, what do you want people to say about it at the end of the day?
Well, it should continue to serve you through sport. It continue to enhance the knowledge of sport and society, and it needs to. It's a service organization that will be there in perpetuity. I hope that we'll have the games here again in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. We almost got the nod from the USOC, and who knows, maybe we'll still have a shot at that. And then we can begin again to have this community understand, as it has done twice already, the great privilege of hosting the finest athletes in the world. What do I want it to do? I want it to be good at what it does. And that's the other thing that I've noticed that people say, that we do what we say we do. And that's not always the case with foundations, but we do what we say we do.
Fantastic. I've learned a lot. I think maybe there's a few questions that might help us learn some more. Does anyone have any questions about the organization or sustainability? Yes.
So what's next?
What's next for moi?
Yeah.
Got any ideas? I will be available. There are lots of things I want to thank. Because I've also been an IOC member the entire time I've been president of the foundation, it's been a little bit challenging because that work is going on, and often I do that at night since LA is where it is. We're in kind of the middle of the world, so it makes it easier to do that stuff at night. And then by day do this other job, so I'll have a chance to literally to think and to figure out what I should do next. I have a wealth of information about sports, from youth sports all the way through, maybe not complete about professional sports, but about Olympic sports. There's no one who's been in this longer continually than I. So I just want to continue to share what I know.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question. You mentioned about the decision to focus on youth sports and youth for the foundation, and I'm curious, were there other potential candidates for what the foundation could have focused on? Looking at, if I'm not mistaken, in Atlanta they have the Blaze Sports Foundation that's with funds from the games in Atlanta, and that's focused on sports for people with disabilities. So I'm curious, were there other options to choose from, and the board decided we're going to focus on youth sports, or was it always youth sports from the get-go?
Well, it was a complete tabula rasa for the board to decide what to do. It needed to be sports. That was the only requirement of the IOC, because there had never been this kind of surplus before at any games. LA had a $1.2 million surplus in 1932, if you can imagine that. But it was much larger in '84. So they just said it had to be sports. So then the decision was youth sports, and then to determine that it should be just Southern California, the areas that hosted the games, so that the children and grandchildren of those who had done the volunteer work and so forth would benefit. But we decided, since 60% of the surplus, which was all earned by the one event, went to the USOC, that elite level athletes would be supported through that. And so we don't support elite level athletes. Juniors really are not elite, even though in their minds they might think they are. Anyway, and there's no high school. I mean, LeBron James might have been, but I think he would admit that his time as a professional athlete really made him more than he was even coming out of high school. So we're good at that, I think.
I think we might have time for one more question. Yes.
What advice would you give your successors?
Listen to the people who've been there. Think with an open mind, because there's no other organization like that with the tools that we have and the reach that we have, and I think the positive reputation that it has. So listen and think and then act.
It's been a pleasure for me. Thank you so much, Mrs. DeFrantz.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.